Hello everyone, welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm Mike.
And I'm Matt. And today we're talking about making water fresh. How does one make water fresh?
Well, we're going to have to figure out how to make water fresh, and I'm afraid that the simple answer is it's not easy. But this is one of these big problems that we read about occasionally in the newspaper, and we really should be worrying a lot more about. As we know, the world is facing major environmental problems, right? The world is getting warmer, air pollution is getting worse, the land is having trees cut down so we can have more farms and farmers and cows and all those types of things that just make the problem worse. But really, one of the main things we're going to have to deal with is a lack of drinking water.
Right, so with pollution, as pollution gets into the water systems, it means that you can no longer just boil the water to make it clean, because there might be things like heavy metals or other pollutants which make the water not drinkable even after you've boiled it. So for many people who don't have access to ways to use like a water filter or things like that, there's not a lot of options to get fresh water.
Absolutely. Pollution's one problem, but of course climate change, changing weather patterns. We've noticed it here in Taiwan. The big rains that we used to get in the spring aren't as big as they used to be. If we run out of water, well, of course, we'll have to find new ways to wash things, make things, but also what will we drink? We're surrounded by an ocean, but we can't drink that water. It's full of salt. So we're going to have to figure out how to make water fresh, or to make fresh water. In other words, water that humans and our animals can drink. Let's find out how to do it. There's no doubt that we would die without water. Yet, because of an increase in droughts caused by global warming, we will be facing a water crisis in the next decade. Such a disaster would affect almost 2 billion people. One solution that could ensure that the world will always have enough drinking water is desalination.
Welcome back. We're talking about making water fresh, and today we're looking at part 1.
All right, let's get into it. It says there's no doubt that we would die without water. Absolutely, it is. Along with oxygen, which we breathe, water, oxygen, and food are the three things that we need to live. We would die without oxygen after 5 or 6 minutes. We would die without food after about 2 weeks, but water about 3 days. You could live about 3 days without water, and then that's it. Your body needs it just to work. Yet, because of an increase in droughts caused by global warming, we will be facing a water crisis in the next decade. Yeah, we here in Taiwan, and also we in the world, especially the parts of the world that are warmer, poorer, where they already probably have difficulty getting water to drink and to farm with. This situation is going to get worse, and not in the far future. Notice there it said in the next decade, in the next 10 years. And if things got really bad, if we really started to run out of fresh drinking water, what would happen? Such a disaster would affect almost 2 billion people. And remember, there's about 8 billion people in the world today, so that's about 25% of the global population would be in serious trouble because of this water shortage. Never mind the things that we grow with water.
Oh, right.
Right, all the animals and plants that we also have to give water to. Around the globe, that's why we use the word global. The globe is the world. It's the shape, that ball shape of the world. When we're talking about the world, planets, that kind of thing, we can use this word global. And anything that affects all the world is global. So global politics is world politics, not just in one place. All right, so it's going to be a problem no matter where you live. Maybe a bigger problem in some places, maybe not such a big problem, but it will affect everyone. And of course, when people can't live in a certain place, they move.
Yes.
And then that creates a whole bunch of other problems. Let's get back to the word global. The organization has tracked global temperatures over the past 50 years. So they don't just measure the temperature changes in one place. They measure them all around the world.
Okay, and we're talking about a global disaster. So a disaster is an accident or an event that causes a lot of damage or loss of life. So in this case, this global disaster being a drought would cause many people to die probably, and also would cause people not to have food, would cause a lot of damage to the world because of the lack of water. So for example, last month's earthquake was the worst disaster I have ever experienced. So in that case, an earthquake is what we call a natural disaster, meaning it was not caused by people, it wasn't something that someone did, but it was just something that happens in the world. It's an earthquake.
Absolutely.
The article continues, one solution that could ensure that the world will always have enough drinking water is desalination.
Desalination, remember that word. Hopefully, if we can get this technology right, it will ensure that no one will have problems getting fresh water in the future. And that would be great if we could ensure that. To ensure something is kind of like to promise, to make sure, or to guarantee. When you ensure, you're kind of checking that there's no problems. You're making sure that this will go well. You won't mess up. You won't fail. You won't not succeed. You will succeed. You are ensuring, guaranteeing, making sure, or promising. For example, this map will ensure that we don't get lost on our way to the hotel. If we use the map, there is no way we are not going to find that hotel. The map promises to make us successful. All right, we're going to take a break and then we will be back.
Hello， 大家好，我是 Hanny。在这2天的课程中，我们要来讨论海水淡化的技术。那么课文写到说，没有水我们就会死，这是毫无疑问的。不过，因为全球暖化所引起的旱灾增加，我们将会在未来10年面临水危机。那这样的灾难呢，会影响到将近20亿人。有一个方法可能可以确保永远都会有足够的饮用水，那就是海水淡化 （desalination）。好，那我们补充一下 ，desalination 就是指海水淡化或是海水脱盐，其中这个字首 de 就表示去除，那么它带有后面这个字跟 sal， 它表示盐，所以去除盐应该就很容易联想到它的意思了。而它的动词 desalinate 就表示淡化，除去什么的盐分，可能是淡化海水啊，除去海水的盐分。好，我们再来看到单字 global， 它是形容全球的、全世界的。那么 global warming 就表示全球暖化。再来 disaster， 它是指灾难、灾祸。那所以我们说 natural disaster 就是自然灾害或是指天灾咯。好，再看到 ensure 这个动词，它表示保证、确保。那你可以用 ensure 加上 that 子句去表达说确保某事发生啊、实现的意思。我们接着回到课文中。
Only a tiny percentage of all water on the planet is actually fresh water. The rest is found in the world's seas and oceans as salt water, which cannot be used as drinking water. Desalination is the process of taking some of this salty water and removing the salt. Currently, there are 2 commonly used methods of desalination: thermal desalination and reverse osmosis. The former involves heating salt water until it changes into steam, which is later cooled and collected. The latter involves forcing salt water through a filter at high pressure. The process results in the salt staying on one side of the filter, leaving just pure water on the other side. Both methods result in salt-free water that is safe to drink, so that it can be used in industry or to water crops.
Welcome back. We're continuing to talk about making water fresh. So, only a tiny percentage of all water on the planet is actually fresh water.
Yeah.
The rest is found in the world's seas and oceans as salt water, which cannot be used as drinking water.
No, if you drink salt water or ocean water, you'll die.
And not only not as drinking water, you also can't use it for plants, for growing plants in your garden or for people. So we talked about only a tiny percentage of that water is drinking water. And a percentage means as a percent, a number represented as a percent or out of 100. So percent meaning for every 100, cent means 100, so a percentage means an amount that is represented out of 100. So when we say only a tiny percentage, it means a very small amount, probably less than 5% when it's a tiny percentage.
I think it is. It's around 5, less than 10% of the water actually is in lakes, rivers, or glaciers. This is fresh water. We can drink it, but all the water in all the oceans, no, we can't.
So for our example sentence, a percentage of the money we make will be given to charity.
Oh, okay. So out of $100, you might be giving $30 to a charity or something like that. So how can we make all of this water which we have in the oceans and seas that isn't good for us, how can we make it so that it's okay to drink? Desalination is the process of taking some of this salty water and removing the salt. Salination, salt, you can kind of see the word there. D, you're taking away the salt. So the process of taking salt out of, for example, seawater, ocean water, that process is called desalination, which is great, but it actually is a really hard science to use currently today. Currently, as I said, today. Currently, there are 2 commonly used methods of desalination. If you want to do it, science has given us 2 ways of desalinating. You can use it as a verb or taking the salt out of water. What are those 2 methods? One is thermal desalination and reverse osmosis. Those are the names of the 2 methods or ways of getting salt out of water. We will explain what they are right now.
Okay, so the former, and the former meaning the thermal desalination.
The first in that
first
list.
one.
Okay.
So the former involves heating salt water until it changes into steam, which is later cooled and collected.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if you had a pot of seawater and you boiled it, the water would disappear as steam, and what's inside, the salt, would all be left there, kind of a white crust.
Yep. So you need to collect that steam, though.
Collect that water.
Turn it back into water.
That's drinking water. The salt is still there in the pot or wherever you could click it. So it involves heating the water to be very hot, basically boiling the water, collecting the fresh steam, that drinking water steam, and then getting rid of the rest. When we talk about involving here, that is part of something. To involve something means it is included in something, it is taken and put into a group. We also use it when talking about how we do something. How do I get to your house? Oh, well, I live outside of the city, so it involves taking a train to this town, catching a bus to this place, and then maybe walking for 2 miles or something. All of those different steps are part of getting to my house, all right? So when we talk about involving heating up the water, there might be some other things you do. You have to collect the water, you have to separate the salt, but all of these parts are in this process. For example, Katrina's plans for the summer involve working for her uncle's company. She might have some other plans, maybe taking a little break, maybe doing some other things, but that is one of the big parts of her summer plan.
So the latter, and when I use the latter, I mean the last of the things in a list. So we first had the thermal desalination, and now we have reverse osmosis.
So now we're talking about the second one, the reverse osmosis one. Okay.
So the latter involves forcing salt water through a filter at high pressure. The process results in the salt staying on one side of the filter, leaving just pure water on the other side.
Okay, so this is kind of like when you have that water jug in your fridge, you put water in, it goes through a filter, it takes out all the dirty stuff, or maybe you have one of those taps in your kitchen and it sends the water through something that basically, cuts out or filters out or finds and traps all of the bad stuff in the water. Okay, that sounds like a way of doing it. Now, we read both methods result in salt-free water. Well, that is safe to drink so that it can be used in industry or to water crops. So both of these, we're learning basically, both of these ways work. If you do it with the heat or if you do it with the filter, it will end up being safe drinking water that you can use, of course, to drink, but also to use on farms.
Right, to use on farms or to water crops. So crops are plants that are grown on farms for either food or other uses, and it can be at a larger scale, so it's not just 1 or 2 plants. In order to have a crop, you'd have many plants in an area that you're growing for a purpose of maybe selling or even just eating yourself or using yourself. For example, Farmer Bill put up a fence to protect his crops from wild animals.
Okay, we might think of rice, wheat, apples on trees, grapes in a vineyard. All of those different things would be crops on different farms for different farmers. That's it for today. So next time we're going to come back and learn more about the pros and the cons of these different methods of desalination. It's important stuff, and it's going to become more important as we move into the future. So come back and join us for that. Until then, enjoy yourself a nice glass of drinking water.
在地球所有的水当中，其实只有很小比例的水是淡水，其余的是以盐水的形态存在世界上的海洋当中。那我们在讲到淡水资源时 ，Mike 老师他有提到 glacier。Glacier 就表示冰河或是冰川，那么单字 percentage 它表示百分比或是比例。我们用 a percentage of 来指一部分的什么什么，你也可以在 percentage 前面加上形容词来修饰。所以像我们课文他说 a tiny percentage of 就是很小比例的什么什么。好，那我们知道说盐水不能用来当做饮用水，那海水淡化就是提取一些这种盐水，然后除去盐分的过程。目前就有2种常用的海水淡化方法，一种呢是热能海水淡化 （thermal desalination）， 另外一种呢就是我们常听到这个 RO 逆渗透。这个 RO 是什么缩写呢？就是 reverse osmosis， 用来表达逆渗透。好，那热能海水淡化是需要加热盐水，直到它变成蒸汽。那蒸汽之后呢，就会被冷凝采集。至于逆渗透，则是需要以高压迫使这个盐水通过过滤器，这个过程就会导致盐留在过滤器的一端，那么另一端就只留下纯水。好，这2种方法都可以产生可以安全饮用的无盐水，那可以用在工业或是灌溉农作物上。我们来看看单字 involve， 这个动词就表示需要、包含、牵涉或是涉及的意思。那么 crop 它表示作物、收成。老师在讲作物的时候，其实他有提到 vineyard 这个字 ，V-I-N-E-Y-A-R-D， vineyard 表示葡萄园。好，那这边2个重点，我们进入文法时间。好，我们在课文里面有看到 which 当关系代名词的用法，那我们就来整理。第一个重点是 which 当关系代名词可以引导关系子句去修饰或是补述说明前方的事物，也就是先行词。那以下要分别介绍限定用法和非限定用法。好，首先限定用法就是在先行词它是不特定的事物时，我们就要限定它的范围，所以是用限定用法。那么 which 引导的形容词子句就是用来修饰先行词，这时候 which 前面不加逗号。那么关系代名词你也可以用 that 来代替，像 the watch which you gave me 或是 the watch that you gave me is broken。如果你只说 the watch 手表，不知道是哪一只，所以我接着关系子句去限定说是你给我的那只手表，所以这句是说你给我的那只手表坏掉了。再来看到非限定用法，这时候是当先行词它是独一无二的事物时，我们用非限定用法。which 引导的形容词子句是用来补述说明先行词，这时候 which 前面必须加上逗号哦，那不可以用 that 代替。举例来说 ，Derek's watch，which he bought at a night market yesterday, is broken. Derek 的手表坏掉了，那是他昨天在夜市买的。那么 Derek 的手表是一个独一无二的事物，就是那一只，不用再限定范围了，所以非限定用法哦。好，再下一个重点是片语动词 result in， 它表示导致、造成，后面接引起、导致的结果，就跟 lead to 意思用法相同。例如 long-term stress may result in mental health problems， 长期的压力可能会导致心理健康问题。好，那比较一个用法就是，如果用 result from 改用 from 的话，这时候是表达起因于什么什么，由什么产生，后面要接事情发生的原因。例如 headaches can result from stress， 头痛可能起因于压力。好，那么以上这讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
There's no doubt that we would die without water. Yet, because of an increase in droughts caused by global warming, we will be facing a water crisis in the next decade. such a disaster would affect almost 2 billion people. One solution that could ensure that the world will always have enough drinking water is desalination. Only a tiny percentage of all water on the planet is actually fresh water. The rest is found in the world's seas and oceans as salt water, which cannot be used as drinking water. Desalination is the process of taking some of this salty water and removing the salt. Currently, there are two commonly used methods of desalination: thermal desalination and reverse osmosis. The former involves heating salt water until it changes into steam, which is later cooled and collected. The latter involves forcing salt water through a filter at high pressure. The process results in the salt staying on one side of the filter, leaving just pure water on the other side. Both methods result in salt-free water that is safe to drink, so that it can be used in industry or to water crops.
Hi, I'm Josh.
And I'm Kiki.
Today we're going to be playing Word Drop, where we have 3 cards with words or phrases on them, and we don't know what's on them. We haven't even looked at them. We're going to turn them over and try and weave them into a conversation as casually as possible.
Okay.
It's quite the challenge.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Challenge accepted. Okay, I'm going to start this off.
All
All
right.
right. Okay. Yeah, right. So when I go to the beach, I tend to bring a lot of water with me, primarily because it's very easy to get dehydrated when you're at the beach on a hot day. So I like to stay hydrated and drink a lot of fluids while I'm just enjoying my time in the sun, enjoying my times in the waves. But I've noticed not many people do that. In fact, it's a very low percentage.
Well, speaking of low percentages, you know what I've noticed are that next to beaches, it's not the right type of terrain for agriculture, right? So you don't see a lot of farming, you don't see people growing things. So that means we won't see many crops.
That just ruins my day if I can't see more agricultural farmland than I want to. And I'm having trouble even comprehending that could even be a possibility. I think we need more land and we need to grow more food. I would love to have a farm in my backyard that grew absolutely everything, but I don't, and it's a disaster.
Well, speaking of disasters, we are currently having a global shortage of food, so a lot of people are asking to support our local farmers, and they're trying really hard to grow more food for everybody. But at the end of the day, you can't bring that, globally.
So I guess we're just going to have to start locally. If we can't do it globally, politics starts at home. So just focus on what you're doing at home, and then when you can get that kind of a bit up to scratch, then we can move on to the global realm. With that, I know in Australia, where I'm from, agriculture does all right. We have a lot of farms, we've got a lot of crops, we're growing a lot of things, whether or not we're feeding a lot of people. But yeah, if we don't have enough food, then it results in a lot of hungry tummies.
Yes, that's true. So like what you said, I think that means the politicians and, the agriculture ministries and all the local farmers, they really have to work together to make sure they're really growing enough food that they can send locally or globally. So they really have to ensure that happens.
I think we've cracked hit the nail on the head here.
Yeah.
And all I know is that I think I'm going to start farming.